I warned my best friend for 10 straight years that the man who cheated on her would cheat again. She married him anyway, defended him every time, ignored every red flag, and now that she's calling me a bad friend for not being shocked. Alright, buckle in, because this story doesn't get smarter with time, it only gets more infuriating. So yeah, rewind to about a literal decade ago. I was in my master's program, already married, already settled, not looking for drama, not looking for friends, just trying to get through grad school with my sanity intact. That's when I met her. We didn't bond over shared interests or mutual ambition or some quirky coincidence. We bonded because I found her crying in a corner of the building like a discarded extra in a tragedy. She was devastated. Full body shaking, mascara running, barely breathing, devastated. I sat with her, listened, did the decent human thing. She told me her boyfriend had been cheating. At first I assumed it was the usual flavor of betrayal, drunk mistake, impulsive stupidity, something awful but mundane. Nope. This was cinematic villain nonsense. This man had been traveling for work. He talked endlessly about how much he loved her. He talked about marriage. He talked about their future. He even convinced her to get a matching tattoo with him as a symbol of their bond. Romantic, right? Except, plot twist, he was engaged to another woman the entire time. And before you ask, no, he didn't have to explain the tattoo to his fiancée because, surprise, she had the exact same one. Same design. Same placement. Same manipulative sales pitch about proof of love. He literally ran a 2-track emotional con and branded both women like collectibles. She found out when someone tagged him in a photo with the tattoo visible, and the lies unraveled in that slow, nauseating way where every answer creates 5 worse questions. That's when I found her crying in a corner. The months after that were brutal for her. She told the fiancé the truth. The guy retaliated by sending her vicious messages, insults, blame, emotional whiplash, and every time he popped back into her inbox, she'd spiral again. I became her support system. I was the one reminding her she wasn't crazy. The one grounding her when she felt like she'd imagined the whole thing. The one sitting with her while she tried to stitch her dignity back together. We became close. Really close. Not romantically, I need to stress that, but emotionally. We studied together constantly. She became my study partner, and frankly, she carried more than her share of group work. I won't pretend there wasn't a practical upside to our friendship. It was a rough time for her, but academically, we crushed it. Then we graduated. And once the daily proximity disappeared, it became painfully obvious that my presence had been the only thing standing between her and the dumbest decision imaginable. Once he stopped sending hateful messages, he switched tactics. Suddenly, he was remorseful, heartbroken, enlightened. She was the love of his life. He couldn't forgive himself. He had changed. Every manipulative cliché, delivered with the confidence of a man who had successfully gotten away with this exact routine before. She fell for it. We had a falling out when she told me how wonderful he was being now. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her this was temporary. That men like this don't transform, they rotate targets. I told her I would bet money that he was either already trying this exact routine on his ex-fiancée again, or had failed and circled back to her as plan B. She told me I didn't know him like she did. I told her, bluntly, that I thought I knew him better than she did. Not because I loved him, but because I saw his behavior without emotional fog, and that I knew exactly how this would end. She called me an a-hole. Fine. I dropped it. You can't save people who are determined to set themselves on fire. I brought it up once more when they got engaged. Immediately shut down. No discussion. No reflection. Just blind certainty that this time was different. I did not attend the wedding. Years passed. Life moved on. We weren't close anymore, but we weren't hostile either. Then one day, out of nowhere, she reached out. They were getting divorced. Shocking. Truly. Call the press. She told me he had cheated again. Multiple times. Lied constantly. Gaslit her until she didn't trust her own memory. The marriage had been exactly what I said it would be. She was devastated. Again. And here's the part that really stuck with me. She said, I should have listened to you. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel smug. I felt tired. Sad. Angry in that quiet way where you're not surprised, just disappointed that the obvious played out exactly as predicted and someone still lost years of their life to it. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't rub it in. I listened. I offered empathy. But I also didn't pretend this came out of nowhere. Some people mistake intensity for love. Some mistake suffering for proof of commitment. And some people, like him, mistake other human beings for props in their personal redemption arc. So yeah, after the wedding fallout and the quiet, awkward, we're still technically friends but on different planets now phase, we mostly drifted. That was partly because I couldn't stand the guy, and partly because once they were living together and then married, any attempt to hang out with her meant he'd be there too. And I'm many things, but I'm not fake enough to pretend I enjoy the company of a man whose introductory fun fact was weaponized matching tattoos. Life did its thing. Time passed. Then COVID hit, and suddenly she was out of work and panicking. Despite everything, I still cared about her. She's smart, capable, and genuinely good at what she does. So when an opportunity opened up at my organization, I put my neck out and helped get her recruited. She nailed the role. Truly. No complaints there. Professionally, she's excellent. Working together was interesting. We weren't nearly as close as we'd once been, but we'd chat at work, grab coffee, complain about mutual annoyances. And honestly, my workplace is full of relentlessly positive, corporate optimism types. Finding a fellow hater in that environment is like finding potable water in a desert. She is such a hater, and I mean that affectionately. It bonded us in a quiet way. Then she got pregnant. She went on maternity leave, and when she came back, I started hearing familiar phrases. Phrases that should come with a warning label. Her husband was suddenly working late. A lot. Constant emergencies. Endless after-hours issues. Which is fascinating because he works QA for a tech firm, not emergency medicine, not disaster response, not air traffic control. But sure. Quality needed assuring at 10 p.m. Every night. Out of nowhere. I clocked it immediately. Immediately. Like, didn't even have to think about it. I said it out loud. He's cheating. Because of course he was. This man has a brand. And childbirth is practically a flashing neon sign saying time to cheat for men like him. Exhausted wife. New responsibilities? Attention not 100% on him? Oh yeah. That's his cue. She blew up at me. Apparently, I just never liked him. I never gave him a chance. I always assumed the worst in people. And look, she wasn't wrong on the facts. I did never like him. I did never give him a chance. I do always assume the worst in people. But I also assume the worst in people who have already proven to be the worst. The tattoo story was literally the first chapter of this man's biography. What character growth arc was I supposed to be banking on? Still, lesson learned. I shut up. For months, she'd tell me how hard it was. How lonely she felt. How she was basically raising a child alone while her husband worked late again. I'd nod. I'd make sympathetic noises. I'd ask about the baby. I'd pivot to work gossip. I said nothing. Because apparently pattern recognition is offensive. And then, because the universe has a sick sense of humor, here we are, a full decade after the first corner-crying incident, completing the world's dumbest circle. I find her crying again. Okay, technically she was crying at her desk in her office, but that doesn't hit the same narratively, so let's emotionally relocate her to a corner. Some things deserve symmetry. And imagine my absolute, earth-shattering shock when she tells me her husband has been cheating. Cheating. I know. Try to contain yourself. This time, it wasn't even some complex reveal. No detective work. No slow unraveling. A friend just casually spotted his whole ass on a dating app. Profile up. Active. Unbothered. Like a man who has never faced consequences in his life. She was blindsided. Completely shocked. Devastated. Couldn't believe it. Kept saying things like, I never thought he'd do this to me. Reader. He absolutely thought he would. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't need to. The silence between us was doing plenty of work. There's a specific kind of grief that comes with realizing the warning signs weren't subtle, they were screaming, and you still chose not to listen. It's not just heartbreak. It's humiliation mixed with regret, mixed with the slow realization that you wasted years on someone who never even tried to be better. Watching this unfold from the outside was surreal. It was like watching a movie you've already seen twice and still being forced to sit through the ending. Same villain. Same plot twist. Same tears. Just higher stakes now. A marriage. A child. A life more entangled than before. And the thing that gets me isn't that he cheated again. That was inevitable. It's that she was still surprised. That after everything, the tattoos, the lies, the manipulation, the engagement theatrics, the history, she genuinely believed this time was different. All right. Here's the part where I fully admit that I did not handle this with grace, kindness, or emotional intelligence. I handled it like absolute garbage. But also, holy F hell, it has been 10 years of this exact same nonsense, and at some point the patient's tank runs dry and starts leaking acid. So when I found her crying, again, and she finally told me that her husband was cheating again, instead of doing the soft, supportive, "Oh no, I'm so sorry, that must be such a shock," routine, what came out of my mouth was something closer to, "Yeah, obviously. I'm honestly just surprised it took this long for you to find out. I know. I know. Not great. Not gentle. Not what Hallmark cards are made of." But the words were out before my brain could wrestle them back in. She immediately asked me what I meant by that. And since I was already ankle-deep in the emotional grave I was digging for myself, I explained. I told her that the second he started working late, all the time, especially right after she had a baby, I assumed he was cheating. Because that's what he does. That's his whole thing. That's literally the only consistent character trait this man has ever displayed. That did not go over well. She got angry. Like really angry. She accused me of knowing and not saying anything. She said that if I were a real friend, I would have warned her. I told her that I did warn her. Years ago. Loudly. Repeatedly. And that every single time I did, I got yelled at, accused of being judgmental, told I didn't know him like she did, and made out to be some bitter a-hole who just never gave him a chance. Eventually, after being punished for pointing out the obvious, I stopped. Because what was the point? Apparently pattern recognition is a moral failing. That's when she told me I was a bad friend. She said a true friend would have tried harder. And that was where something in me just snapped clean in half. I lost it. I called her a F idiot. Not my proudest moment, but also, what the hell else was I supposed to say? I told her that this man cheated on her before they were married, not in some drunken one-night stand way, but in a long-term, elaborate, cartoon villain-level double life. He was literally engaged to another woman at the same time. He convinced both women to get matching tattoos as proof of his love. And after all of that, after she found out she was the other woman, she took him back. She rewarded him with forgiveness, loyalty, marriage, and a child. What lesson did that teach him? Certainly not, don't cheat. It taught him that cheating is survivable, that there are no real consequences, that as long as he cries convincingly and says the right words, everything resets. I told her, bluntly, that he was always going to leave the way he came in. A relationship that starts with cheating doesn't magically end with respect and integrity. It ends the same way, just messier. I said that when someone shows you who they are and you decide to stay anyway, you are actively teaching them how to treat you. She taught him that cheating wouldn't blow up his life. She taught him that she would defend him. She taught him that she would doubt everyone else before doubting him. So, why on earth would he ever stop? What possible incentive did he have to be faithful when his entire lived experience told him he could get away with it? And yes, I said something truly cruel at the end. I told her that if she wanted to blame me, she could go right ahead, because I was going home to my wife and kids. Because I don't need to work late 5 nights a week. Because I'm not the most obviously cheating husband alive. And then I walked out. So yeah, that was a lot. Now, with some distance, I do feel bad. I know I went too far. I know I kicked someone who was already down. She was hurting, humiliated, grieving her marriage, and I responded with brutal honesty sharpened into a weapon. I own that. I do. But at the same time, being this consistently right for this long, having your advice ignored over and over again, only to then be accused of being a bad friend for not screaming louder into the void? That's bullshit. Absolute bullshit. Since then, we haven't really spoken. We exchanged the most minimal, painfully polite good morning at work and nothing else. I miss her. I genuinely do. She was my friend. We've shared a decade of history. I watched her fall apart the first time this man destroyed her. I supported her through that. I helped her rebuild. I literally helped her get this job during COVID. But I'm also just done. I love workplace gossip as much as the next person, but I don't love it enough to keep swallowing this level of frustration and emotional whiplash. And yes, this is selfish, but I can't stand that I tried so hard not to be in a hole, by keeping quiet, by biting my tongue, by letting her live her life, and still ended up being painted as one anyway. So now I'm stuck wondering, am I actually the a-hole here? Do I owe her an apology? Or is it reasonable to finally say, I've done my part and I'm done? She's going through hell, yes, but this friendship has always come at the cost of me being the villain for telling the truth.